not just a structure, but a symbol of power so absolute it echoes for 2 millennia?
And how do you do it in less than a decade?
The Roman Colosseum is not merely a marvel of architecture. It is one of history's greatest case studies in project management. A mega-project completed with a speed and efficiency that would challenge modern construction. Executed with tools and technologies powered by little more than muscle, leverage, and sheer ingenuity.
To understand this achievement is to deconstruct a masterclass in logistics, labor management, and systemic thinking.
The Colosseum was a calculated act of political theater, funded by war and built to secure a dynasty. Its true genius lies not in the travertine stone, but in the organizational framework that brought it into being. Now, let's open the historical ledger and analyze the economic blueprint this crisis left behind. To grasp the catalyst for the Colosseum's construction, we must first understand the systemic chaos from which it emerged. The year is 69 AD. Rome is reeling.
The decadent and deeply unpopular Emperor Nero is dead. And the vacuum of power has ignited a brutal civil war, known as the Year of the Four Emperors.
The Roman world has been torn apart by legions marching against each other.
And the capital itself has witnessed bloodshed and instability on a scale not seen for generations. The state treasury is depleted, infrastructure is crumbling, and the morale of the Roman people is at its nadir. This was the status quo ante, a superpower on the verge of implosion, desperate for a stabilizing force. That force arrived in the form of Titus Flavius Vespasianus Vespasian.
He was not a traditional aristocrat from a long-established Roman family.
He was a pragmatic, battle-hardened general, the son of a tax collector, who had risen through the ranks on merit. His accession marked the beginning of the Flavian dynasty, but his position was precarious. To the Roman elite, he was a provincial upstart. To the people, he was simply the latest victor in a bloody contest for power. He needed more than just military authority. He needed legitimacy. And in Rome, legitimacy was built in stone and concrete. Vespasian needed a grand gesture, a project that would not only employ tens of thousands of Romans, but also symbolically erase the memory of his predecessor, Nero. The perfect location was staring him in the face, the sprawling, opulent private estate Nero had built for himself in the heart of Rome.
The Domus Aurea, or Golden House.
At its center was an enormous man-made lake, a personal indulgence in a city where housing was cramped and public space was precious. Vespasian's decision was a stroke of political genius. He would drain the lake and, in its place, build the largest amphitheater the world had ever seen, a gift to the Roman people. The message was clear and powerful. Where a tyrant built for his own pleasure, the Flavians would build for the public good. But a project of this magnitude required a truly staggering amount of capital.
The Civil War had left the Roman state financially crippled. The solution to this fiscal black hole came from the East.
In 70 AD, Vespasian's son, Titus, decisively ended the First Jewish-Roman War with the siege and capture of Jerusalem. The spoils were immense. The treasures of the Second Temple, along with vast quantities of gold and silver, were plundered and brought back to Rome. This colossal influx of wealth was the financial engine that would power the Colosseum's construction. An inscription later placed at the site explicitly stated that the amphitheater was built from the spoils of war, ex manubius.
Furthermore, the campaign provided another critical resource, a massive pool of captive labor.
While skilled Roman engineers and artisans would form the core of the workforce, tens of thousands of prisoners of war provided the raw manpower needed for quarrying, hauling, and heavy lifting. The project was not just a monument, it was a direct physical consequence of military conquest.
A conversion of foreign assets into a domestic political statement. The foundation wasn't just concrete. It was funded by a military and economic triumph.
The impossible mandate had its funding, its location, and its workforce.
With the political will established and the financial resources secured, the Flavians initiated a process. The genius of the Colosseum's construction lies in a systemic approach that modern project managers would recognize today. A sophisticated combination of a tiered labor force, aggressive material logistics, and the revolutionary application of standardization.
This was not just a construction site. It was a highly organized, human-powered assembly line.
The first challenge was managing the workforce itself, a veritable army of tens of thousands of individuals. A common misconception paints a picture of slaves being whipped to raise the structure. The reality, however, was far more complex and economically driven.
The workforce was a carefully calibrated pyramid.
At the apex were the Roman architects and engineers, the highly compensated masterminds who designed the structure,
calculated the immense structural loads, and oversaw the entire operation.
Below them was a substantial middle class of skilled artisans, stonemasons, carpenters, and metalworkers. These were Roman citizens, often organized into professional guilds, who were paid competitive wages for their expertise. The base of the pyramid was composed of a massive force of unskilled labor. This is where the captives from the Jewish war played a critical role, providing the raw muscle for the most grueling tasks.
Quarrying the stone, hauling the blocks, and mixing the tons of mortar and concrete.
But even here, they worked alongside lower-class Roman citizens in need of employment.
This tiered system was a framework of incentives.
The true secret to the project's velocity, however, was the principle of standardization.
The foundational element of the Colosseum is the arch. The Romans did not invent the arch, but they perfected it and, more importantly, industrialized it. The entire exterior of the building is a breathtakingly repetitive matrix of arches, 80 on each of the first 3 levels.
This modular design was the key.
Rather than treating the structure as a single, bespoke artistic creation, the Roman engineers treated it as a collection of standardized, repeatable components. Evidence for this is literally carved in stone. On many of the arches and blocks, we find Roman numerals.
These are widely interpreted as assembly marks, indicating which piece went where. This strongly suggests a system of prefabrication.
At the quarries in Tivoli, some 20 miles away, blocks of travertine were not just extracted, they were cut. They arrived at the construction site as components in a massive kit, ready to be hoisted into place. This assembly line was fed by a logistical supply chain of immense scale and complexity. The primary material, over 100,000 cubic meters of travertine stone, was moved from the Tivoli quarries, down the river Aniene to the Tiber, and then transferred to massive wooden carts to be hauled through the city to the site. This required meticulous coordination of barges, roads, and manpower. For the interior and less critical structures, the builders used lighter tufa and brick. But the most significant material was Roman concrete, or opus caementicium. This remarkable innovation, a mixture of lime mortar, water, and volcanic ash known as pozzolana.
Unlike stone, concrete could be mixed on site and poured into molds, allowing for the rapid creation of.
It was cheap, incredibly strong, and versatile, a technological advantage that cannot be overstated.
To manage the physical construction, the massive circular site was deconstructed into smaller, more manageable sections.
The evidence points to the amphitheater being built in 4 distinct quadrants, likely managed by 4 separate contractors. This methodology, a precursor to modern parallel processing, allowed the structure to rise evenly from all sides.
It also created a competitive environment, with each team likely incentivized to meet or exceed its deadlines.
Within these quadrants, massive timber cranes, powered by human treadmills, were the workhorses. These machines, capable of lifting blocks weighing several tons, were essential force multipliers,
allowing small teams to do the work of hundreds of men.
This combination, a managed workforce, prefabricated components, a robust supply chain, and a decentralized construction plan,
was the organizational engine that allowed the Flavian dynasty to erect a timeless monument.
In less time than it takes to build a modern office tower.
It was a triumph not just of architecture, but of systematic, process-driven management.
In 80 AD, a year after Vespasian's death, his son and successor, Titus, inaugurated the Flavian amphitheater.
With 100 days of spectacular games.
The project was a resounding triumph.
In less than a decade, a symbol of tyranny had been replaced by an icon of public welfare.
A swampy private lake transformed into the most advanced entertainment venue on Earth.
The Flavian dynasty, once new and uncertain, had literally cemented its place in Roman history. The Colosseum was an immediate and overwhelming success, not only as a political statement, but as a functional piece of civic architecture. It could hold an estimated 50,000 to 80,000 spectators.
Who could enter and exit the venue with remarkable speed through its 80 ground-level entrances.
A testament to the Romans' grasp of crowd control and fluid dynamics.
The long-term consequences of this project were profound.
The Colosseum became the archetypal Roman amphitheater. Its design and structural solutions
replicated in cities across the vast expanse of the empire.
It was a cultural export, a physical manifestation of Roman identity stamped onto provincial landscapes.
From North Africa to Gaul,
for the next 4 centuries, it was the vibrant and often brutal heart of Roman public life.
More importantly, it became an enduring symbol of Roman engineering prowess and the power of the state.
It was a declaration that the Roman system could marshal financial capital, natural resources, and human labor on a scale previously unimaginable,
and channel it into a project of singular vision.
The fascinating part is that the core principles that made this ancient megaproject possible are the very same frameworks that drive productivity in our most advanced modern industries.
The Roman focus on standardization and prefabricated components
is the direct ancestor of the modern assembly line.
Henry Ford didn't invent the concept of breaking down a complex product into simple, repeatable parts to accelerate production.
He scaled a principle the Romans had applied to architecture 2,000 years earlier.
Today, when we see modular homes or prefabricated skyscrapers being assembled on-site,
we are witnessing the legacy of the Roman engineers who marked their travertine blocks with numerals. The decision to build the Colosseum in 4 parallel quadrants is a clear forerunner to what we now call concurrent engineering or agile project management. Instead of a slow, linear process, the Romans divided the task into independent work streams that could operate simultaneously, drastically shortening the project timeline. This is the exact same logic that allows tech companies to develop different software modules at the same time, or that enables complex engineering projects to build different systems in parallel before final integration. The Romans understood, intuitively, that the fastest way to complete a massive task is to deconstruct it and allow the pieces to grow together. Furthermore, the logistical mastery required to quarry, transport, and manage the vast quantities of stone, sand, and wood
echoes in the sophisticated supply chain management of our own time.
The systems needed to move travertine from Tivoli to Rome are conceptually no different from the global networks that allow.
It is all a question of process, coordination, and foresight.
Finally, the entire endeavor serves as a timeless lesson in the power of a moonshot objective. Much like the Apollo program, the Colosseum project had a clear, ambitious goal.
Was backed by immense state funding and was driven by a powerful political imperative.
Such projects succeed because their singular, galvanizing vision aligns resources and focuses human ingenuity toward a single point of victory. The Colosseum stands today as more than a ruin. It is a record of an ancient productivity system. A framework for achieving the impossible. It teaches us that the tools of management, standardization, parallel processing, and logistical excellence are as timeless as stone. By studying its construction, we gain more than a history lesson. We gain a blueprint, proving that the greatest barriers to our ambitions are often not technical, but organizational.